Hi, I'm Jennifer Nicely with Pinnacle Real Estate Academy. I'm your go-to when it comes to real estate and real estate education. Today, I want to continue our conversation on the NAR settlement. Here's what I'm getting from a lot of agents is they want to fix the problem really quickly and they have a knee-jerk reaction and they start with explaining to the sellers information that's not completely accurate. Now, their goal is good intent. They have great intent, but the verbiage that they're using is completely wrong and inaccurate. So I want to talk to you about listing presentations and how you need to present to these sellers the importance of paying a buyer's agent's commission. Now, remember in past videos, we've discussed how buyers can pay for buyer's agent's commissions. Buyers can request that the sellers pay for the buyer's agent's commissions, and sellers can just automatically offer to pay the buyer's agent's commissions. So there's multiple ways of handling this. So this video is only talking about one of those aspects. So please know, don't come for me when you talk about this is not the only option. You are correct, this is not the only option. But if you decide to approach the seller and talk to them about offering a buyer's agent's commission, please do not say to the seller that they need to pay the buyer's agent's commission so that more agents would show their property because you're paying them. I understand where you're coming from as a real estate agent to say that, but what you are saying to them is that only agents that are getting paid are going to show your property. And that is grossly inaccurate. Not only is that illegal, it's also unethical. But I also know that that's not what you're meaning. What you're meaning is if the seller helps pay for the buyer's agent's commission, it helps more buyers be able to purchase that property. And here's what that means. Buyers are going to have trouble paying for commissions. Not all buyers, but certain buyers are, because number one, they've got to have cash for, let's say, 20% down payment or 3.5% down payment. There's all different levels of down payments, but let's just say 20% down payment. Then on average, it costs about 3% in closing costs just to get in a house. That's going to be attorney's fees, prorated insurance, prorated taxes, inspections. All of that roughly adds up to be about 3% of the purchase price. So now they have a 20% down payment. They have roughly 3% in closing costs. And then to add commissions on top of that, no matter how much the charge is, not a lot of buyers have that cash. So what has happened in the past is sellers have wrapped it into the sales price to come out the bottom. So the sellers still net what they wanted to net, and they just wrapped it into the sales price. That was to assist the buyer. Now, yes, the buyer has it wrapped into the sales price. So they do ultimately help pay for this commission. So now that you are presenting it to a seller, hey, you may want to go ahead and offer to pay a buyer's agent's commission. It's not so that buyer's agents will show your property. That's bogus. It's because you want to help that buyer who may be cash poor, who doesn't have the cash to pay for representation. Now, I understand that some sellers go, I'm not paying for a buyer's representation. Or some sellers go, I don't care if the buyer has representation. What if the buyers go, then I can't look at their home because I want representation? So I understand a seller says that has nothing to do with me. But ultimately, the seller wants to sell their house and close their house. And those buyers who want to work and have representation for themselves may need help when it comes to cash for closing. Again, it's wrapped into the sales price. So the seller can still net what the seller was wanting to net. So it's all in the verbiage. Please do not go out there and tell your sellers that you need to offer a buyer's agent's commission so that buyer's agents will show their property. That's craziness. If the seller offers buyer's agent's commissions, it is to help the buyer because the buyer may not have the cash to do so themselves and they may not elect to forego representation. That is why a seller may want to pay a buyer's agent. Now, on a second note, sellers didn't pay buyer's agents the way it was structured. So for those real estate agents that are watching this video, this is going to make sense to you. But for members of the public, this might not make a lot of sense because it hasn't been the narrative of the media. But what happened was a seller would agree to pay a certain amount of percentage that was negotiated between the listing agent and the seller. Those rates were all over the place. It could be from $0 to 10% and everywhere in between. It was up to the seller and the listing agent of what they charged. But when they charged that fee and the seller agreed to it, it was up to the listing agent to pay a buyer's agent a portion of that total. So the seller has agreed to pay the listing agent X. Let's say rough numbers, 8%. That's a hypothetical number. Don't come at me. 8%. And the listing agent goes, you know what? Out of that 8%, I'm going to pay the buyer's agent 4% of that. The full 8% was technically the listing agent's commission, and they paid the buyer's agent. They split off and gave the buyer's agent whatever they wanted to give them. So reality is, at least in South Carolina and North Carolina, the listing agent paid the buyer's agent, not necessarily the seller. The seller agreed to a compensation, and how that the listing agent split it up was up to the listing agent. Things are happening a little bit different. Okay, so understand that moving forward, it is up to the seller to understand how and why and when they should or should not pay the buyer's agent's commission. So things have changed, but it's not industry ending. It is all about educating your sellers and using the right verbiage. Remember, sellers have choices. Buyers have choices. They need to know that. But they also need to know what your value is as a listing agent and what your value is as a buyer's agent. I hope this video has helped. If you have any comments, as always, comment below. If you have questions, reach out to me. We're always here at Pinnacle Real Estate Academy to help. Again, don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Pinnacle Real Estate Academy.